Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Urban Wine Club's cocktail series. This is a very special and fun segment for us. Joining us with us are my co-hosts, Ari Kalos and
Hello,
Catherine
hello.
Copeland. And
Hello.
this is our Hendrick's cocktail webinar, where we have a very, very special guest, Erik Andersson, who is the brand ambassador for Hendrick's Gin. I wanted to invite him to the segment. Erik, thank you so much for taking the time. I'm sure you got a busy schedule, but welcome to the segment.
Matthias, it's a pleasure to be with you as always.
Excellent.
Thank you.
My pleasure. And even though we are identified as a wine club and so forth, we love to explore outside of wine for that matter. We did a great rum session not too long ago, and gin for us is another interesting special subject area that we want to explore. And what better than to have yourself with us? So welcome, and let's make this a very fun segment with our hosts Ari and Catherine.
Yes.
Can we just get a little bit of background, because I follow you, Erik, on social media, and man, oh man, do you look like you have an interesting life, and you're like, the old commercial with the most interesting man in the world. You're like the next generation of that, and just looking at your backdrop, everything about you has this like quality of like, I want to hear what you have to say. Can you give us a little bit of background?
Oh, I'm not sure to start. Yeah, I suppose I come from a little bit of an unusual background. So my name is Erik Andersson, ambassador to Hendrick's Gin here in the east of the United States. I've been working with Hendrick's Gin now for about 7 years. 8 years now. But doing so from a few different places in the world. I've been living in Hong Kong and Shanghai for a bit. Lived in London for some time as well back in the days, and a few other places. And but my goal has always been to teach bartenders about cocktails and to teach bartending in general. So I'm delighted to be with you tonight.
That's great.
Right.
And you are now based in New York?
Yes, sir. I'm in Brooklyn, New York now. I was actually up in Cape Cod last weekend, so I got my dose of Massachusetts there for a little bit.
Awesome.
Nice.
But haven't been traveling, of course, at all for work. Normally, we actually travel about 150 days a year or more for work.
Wow.
With all the events that we're doing. So
Erik, let's first, before we get going, let's talk a little bit about gin in general, because right now there's so many trends going on in the industry. Tequila has been hot, mezcal has been hot, and I'm starting to see that we're seeing this renaissance of classics coming back to the industry, and gin happens to be, in my opinion, one of the true classics of cocktails. Can we touch a little bit about gin in general and kind of discuss the evolution in a very short time frame here? Is that possible?
Absolutely. Yeah, we can dive in as deep as we want, but we can also hit on the key points on the history of gin. So gin in general, if you wish, had its really big glory days, first glory days, I would say, in the sort of late 19th century, where all the kind of the first cocktail books were coming out, and all of which pretty much came from mainly from the Northeast here in America, and some from the West Coast as well. But they very much concentrated as an American cocktail culture for cocktails that were for that classic style. So it would be most of these recipes in these old books, they were actually gin-based cocktails. So that was a dominating spirit for this kind of modern cocktails at that time. And bartenders were really, really excited to mix with gin. And because if you look at it, gin is a spirit that takes all of its flavors from the botanicals. So flowers and herbs and spices and these things. And all of those things, they kind of represent other ingredients in the bar, like vermouth, like bitters, and like juices and all these things. All of those botanicals are kind of part of the gin. So it makes it so mixable. So that's why gin really took off as a very mixable spirit, and people just started to love mixing with gin.
So when you saw those classic movies of the Roaring '20s, is that what they were drinking, gin?
Yeah, well, yeah. so in the 1880s and 1890s, that's where gin really took off a big time. But then, the Nobel experiment between 1919 and 1934, 33, 34, gin pretty much hit its rock bottom because, it was illegal to drink in the country.
Besides,
so
I can understand that.
Yeah, they tried to do something good there. It kind of failed miserably. But that's what, like, the gin that were made in bathtubs during that time wasn't very high quality. But gin came back very strongly just after Prohibition. And so with classic gin cocktails around that time, like, 30s, 40s, and gin became really a cool drink again. And people, we're going to make some martinis later on tonight, but the martini was really one of the drinks that took off in the 40s and 50s.
So back then, how was gin prepared as a cocktail?
Well, there were different ways, actually. I am really passionate about the martinis. I would definitely sing the praises of that. But there are also, like, the gin Ricky that we're going to try a little bit later on. That's a drink from DC from the 1880s, 1890s with gin. So there were, like, long drinks prepared. There were punches prepared. So you can make a gin punch. There were stirred martinis, classic Negronis. There were a bunch of different drinks, and that's what's so beautiful about gin. It's very mixable. It works in just every shape or form. So,
what is your personal favorite?
I'm a big martini favorite myself. I just can't help it. It's my favorite drink in the world. But I do appreciate the diversity in gin. You can mix it with a lot of things, but also that there are so many different gins out there. There are literally thousands of gins now. And when we started making Hendricks back in '99, there were only a very few amount of gins, to be honest. So we kind of pioneered that. But to go into a little bit why Hendricks is different from other gins, gin was very much of a constant from 1840s, 1850s onward until, like, the late 90s, only 20 years ago. And nobody made gin really in a different way. It was London dry gin, a very classic way of making gin. So the method of making that gin is to distill the botanicals with neutral alcohol, but after the distillation, you're not allowed to add any flavor components. You can add some neutral alcohol, and you can add water, of course, but you can't add any flavor components. When we launched Hendricks in '99, we kind of changed around that a little bit because we added cucumbers and roses into the gin. And when our distiller Leslie Gracie suggested that, and like we actually can't distill it, we had to add it as an essence. It won't be a London dry gin, and that was going against the norm. The family and William Grant and Sons says, we don't care, just innovate and make the best gin. So that's what they did, and now this has become the norm to actually infuse the gin with different types of essences.
Oh wow!
So there are no legal binding definitions in America yet. We're working on it as an industry together. But in the EU, they call it distilled gin. So you have London dry gin and distilled gin.
Now, isn't the only legally binding thing in America is that it has to have at least one juniper berry? Because I worked at a distillery before this, and we were starting to dabble in gin, and it was as long as there was at least one juniper berry, it could be considered gin. So is that true to your knowledge?
Absolutely, it is the legal definition for gin. I would say in the world, it has to contain juniper.
Yeah.
Some will go further and say that the spirit has to have a dominating flavor of juniper, but it becomes quite subjective when we start to go into the dominating flavor and whatnot. But for legal terms, it's only one juniper should do it. Yep.
Yeah, which is so funny to me that you only need one juniper berry, but.
Is that more like like a technicality, or is that like a real?
Well, I think if you would make gin that doesn't have at least a bit of character or a significant character of juniper, you kind of not play in the gin in that category, in that world. So I think that most people try to stay within the realm of gin if they want to put the label gin on there. And you can't do it if you put one juniper berry in there.
Right,
It just
exactly.
doesn't taste of gin.
You're not going to get that classic gin flavor. Yeah.
No,
And not
exactly.
to get too technical, but just to ask before we get into the cocktails, isn't there something specific about the actual way that they distill Hendrick's gin, the two separate stills? Is that still how they?
Absolutely. It's very much a thing. So when we launched Hendrix in '99, but in the 1960s, we purchased two antique stills.
Okay.
And they operate very differently. So one of these stills would produce a very light, floral, and fragrant spirit.
Okay.
And the other one would produce a very bold, rich, heavy spirit. And those are both gins in and of themselves. And they are both very elegant and beautiful in and of themselves. But we want to get the best of both worlds together. So that's why we use both and then blend the two together afterward. So we make two different gins and blend them into Hendrick's and then infuse it with cucumbers and roses. So the process is pretty painstaking, to be honest, but it does give us a tremendously beautiful liquid.
Absolutely well worth it. Yeah, it's fantastic. That's why I love enjoying it with cucumbers, but I will let you take it away for the cocktails.
Yeah, no, there are actual cucumbers in Hendrick's gin.
Oh.
And on my shelf at most.
That was just lying there.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
ready.
just hanging out there on the shelf. Yeah, no, so I think we hit on a lot of points like why Hendrick's is different and the world of gin as well. There's so many lovely gins out there now. But I thought I'd make a Hendrick's Gin Ricky, but not a classic Gin Ricky, but rather a little twist on it. And I call it the Ricky Milano.
Oh.
And
the sound of that.
yeah, and so the trend, I would say, globally amongst bartenders is to make twists on classic cocktails. It's been a thing for a very long time, and to really look at what these classic cocktails meant back in the days, and then take your own twist on it. So I poured 2 parts of Hendrick's in my highball glass like this. And I'm just going to be half a part of Campari. Just a little bit. Half a part of simple syrup. Simple syrup isn't that hard to make. You have equal parts of sugar and water by volume, and you just heat it up gently and let it cool down and make sure that all the sugar is dissolved, and that's your simple syrup. Fresh is always best when it comes to cocktails, so I've got some fresh lime here that I'm pressing a la minute. And a good way of knowing how much lime you need. 1 lime is typically an ounce of juice, but now in the summer, when the limes are really big and juicy, you can get up to 1.5 to almost 2 ounces, if you're lucky, from a lime.
Interesting.
But it all depends on seasonality, where they're from. But right now, they're just absolutely lovely and stellar. So, and fresh, of course, into the drink. And so we got 2 parts Hendrick's, half a part Campari, half a part simple syrup, 3/4 parts fresh lime juice, and then just some sparkling water.
It looks
Use
so
club soda.
refreshing. So refreshing.
Absolutely. And I've chosen to use a little bit bigger ice cubes in this drink, so it sits and it doesn't melt over in the heat here down in the city. And then
stir.
yeah, so I can just take the big ice cubes and just press them down enough, and it mixes. And then a wheel of lime in this one. I have lime juice in the drink. I'll put some lime as a garnish.
Wow.
Wow.
So Ricky Milano. I think I
Cheers.
have that recipe actually with me, and I can I can flick that over.
Did we post that on our event page, Ari?
We did, yes.
Yeah.
And I'll also post it when we post this after the fact.
So,
Oh, you did? Excellent.
Yes.
Erik, real quickly.
Yep.
You talked about ice. Ice is a thing as well, right?
It's a big thing. Very important.
And I can't tell you, I can't stress enough that how much more attention we're paying to ice. And why is that?
it's really important. We use typically more ice than we think when we make drinks at home. If you have those trays in the freezer, and if you have like a Boston shaker like this one, and you want to shake 1 or maybe 2 drinks,
Right.
you would use the whole tray of ice to shake 1 or 2 drinks. And if you want to have a cocktail party at home and you want to make maybe 2 rounds for 6 people, that's 12. I mean, it's at least 6 of ice for just 12. What I'm trying to say with this is that we prepare more ice than you think at home. But another thing that I really like to do is that you have those trays or however you produce your ice, and when you've done it, you take them out, put them in Ziploc or Tupperware, close it off, and then reset. Because ice have a tendency to pick up all those aromas and flavors that are all in the freezer. And unless you have a special freezer for cocktail ice, they're gonna soak up everything that's in there. So make the ice, seal them off in the freezer. That's my advice.
That's a very good point.
Yeah, and I noticed you had the larger ice cubes as well, and I prefer those in cocktails because I feel like the drink doesn't get watered down as quickly.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point, and especially in the summer days. Like if you have, say that you have a cocktail in the garden, of course, responsibly wearing mask, but you're outdoors and maybe you're serving a big punch. You can't put ice cubes in that because they melt in 15, 20 minutes. They go, boom. And you take a big bowl, like quite a big one, filtered or mineral water in the freezer, at least 24 hours. But then you end up with a massive block of ice. You chuck that in your punch bowl, and that stays for many hours. So that's a good one for social serves and a bit of a bigger serves at home.
Absolutely.
Awesome. So so that was demonstration number 1.
Yeah.
And as you prepare for demonstration number 2, can we just really touch on a little bit about what makes Hendrick so special?
Absolutely. I'm preparing a little lemon slice garnish here. We make the gin in a different way, like we touched on, using the 2 stills and the 2 different infusions of cucumbers and roses. And Leslie Gracie, our master distiller in Scotland, she created the gin in that way. Yep. That's her formula and her way of making gin. And it's a pioneering way of making gin, to be honest. But still, there are almost no gins that have replicated this method of making it. And it's also made in very small batches. So if you look at the back of the bottle, actually it's listed here on the front on the little beautiful text up here. It's a small batch handcrafted. So small batch gin means that it is distilled in batches of 1,000 liters or less. So for reference, 1,000 liters is, I think it's around 270 gallons, 260 gallons, which is quite a small amount.
Definitely.
Of a small volume. And if you're distilling in small volumes, you have a very good control over the end product. So, and that's what Leslie is all about. She wants to have perfect control of the gin, so she can make the same one over and over again, but also make exactly the gin that she wants.
That's a great example
precision
of,
and consistency.
That's a great example of hands-on.
Oh yeah, absolutely, and it is very hands-on, and it's a small team that she's got 4 gentlemen working for her at the distillery. So they're a very, very tight team that makes the gin.
So,
I've had the privilege of working in the distillery for one day almost. All the tricks and treats, but
not to kind of ask about the secrets, but any specific botanicals in Hendrick's that makes it special from other gins?
I think it would be, well, the cucumber and rose infusion apart, for the 11 botanicals we use a little bit more flowers than traditional gins. So we have elderflower as one of the key botanicals, and we also have chamomile. And those bring beautiful floral notes with just faint hints of sweetness in the background. So those are, we're not the only gin that uses elderflower, but it's not that many that goes that deep into the flavor. I wouldn't say we are predominantly floral gin, but there are floral components in the background that helps with the roundness.
Well, if I may too, because this is floral, not to cut you off, but
we'll get to that in
we'll get to that. Okay, cool.
No, but we should definitely dive into that. The midsummer solstice. Right here, speaking of floral, I saw you were jumping out. Should we make a martini now?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, excellent.
And as you're making your martini, I'm having a refreshing Hendrick and tonic. Fever tree.
Excellent.
Yes, Foti, we're drinking the same thing.
Lovely.
Excellent. Well, here we go. So, as was hinted to a little bit earlier, we do have a couple of variants of Hendrick's gin out there. The Midsummer Solstice is a really deeply floral gin, and the Hendrick's Orbium is a gin that has wormwood, lotus blossom, and cinchona bark.
Wow.
So the reason why I really like Hendrick's Orbium is that it is perfect for my favorite drink, the martini. The reason why it is so good is that it already contains the wormwood, and the key ingredient in vermouth is of course wormwood, and it's even where wormwood got its name from. So the German word for wormwood is Vermouth, and you can kind of take it from there. It's so that's why it's especially good for this drink. I'd like to make my martinis like a 5-to-1, which translates into 2.5 parts of Hendrick's Orbium to half a part vermouth. I prefer, because Hendrick's Orbium is quite robust and quite a big gin, I would go for a Bianco vermouth. So we have a Dolin Blanc here, which is really nice, that works with the Orbium. And if you have Hendrick's Original, I could go with Blanc, but a dry one as well would work nice, like a dry vermouth.
So we're stirring right now. So for our audience who probably is always wondering, the term shaken, not stirred, and so forth, can you just maybe touch on what does that mean and what is the difference between the both?
Absolutely. So we are pretty familiar with the reference where shaken, not stirred comes from. It is the first James Bond novel, Casino Royale. And he was suggesting a cool new way to make a martini. Well, actually, the martini had been shaken a very long time before this. But Ian Fleming, when he wrote the book, he thought it would be cool to include a shaken martini instead of a stirred one. A stirred martini would, actually, let me just garnish this with a small piece of lemon oil here. And salute. There we go. So so that's the stirred, the shaken martini. But martinis have traditionally always been stirred, and the reason why we stir them is that we don't want to dilute the drink too much, and because it's two clear liquids like a gin and a vermouth, you don't have to shake them to mix them properly. They mix just fine if you stir them. And some people say, well, you agitate the gin when you shake it. There are a lot of gin drinks that are shaken where the gin is intact still. It doesn't, agitation of the spirit is not really a thing, but you retain the balance and that controlled dilution of the drink, which I think is beauty. And it also comes out really nice, just like you can see, it's crystal clear like that. But I would say to control your dilution is the best and most important part of a martini. If you want to make a very dry martini, you might not have vermouth at all. Or if you make a very wet martini, you would make maybe 50-50 with gin and vermouth. But in the end of the day, dilution in the martini is super, super important.
So you're dealing with martini with gin on a daily basis. You make many martinis. Do you ever get sick and tired of people asking you that same question, shaken not stirred?
Yeah, it does come. It does come quite a lot in there, but how I like to look at it, and my colleague Matthias Horstman, who is our brand ambassador in Central, based out of Dallas, he puts it really nicely when he says, "I'll have a martini, but make it your way or the bartender's way," and it doesn't necessarily have to be so technical. And when we drink, there are a lot of things that tend to be more and more technical, and for many people, I think it removes a little bit of the charm of it.
Do you have a preferred way?
I would stir it if it was me. But if the bartender delivers a shaken martini with a smile, I would never turn it down.
As long as they're smiling and happy.
Well, I think I'd much rather have a smile than an amazing drink.
Spoken like a true person who has worked in the industry before.
Yeah, and when I talk to younger bartenders especially, I usually say, I worked behind bars for almost 20 years now, but I never served a cocktail in my life. I've only served guests.
Yes, that's a good.
So it's. I think that we can get technical about gin. I do get technical about gin, but in the end of the day, it's about our guests out here.
It's true. It's true. It's a social thing.
I have a little suggestion as well for everybody who wants to make martinis at home, but in a larger scale. Maybe you want to host a couple of people at home. You can prepare a pre-bottled martini in your freezer. And the way to do this, I'm actually going to post that in the chat here if you want to. It's easy to copy paste. It's very easy to remember as well. But if you take a bottle of Hendrick's, and then if a full bottle of Hendrick's, and then you take an empty one, you pour out 10 ounces. And then you pour in 5 ounces of vermouth in here and 5 ounces of water in here. And then you stick this in the freezer. So it still, because of the alcohol content, the martini will not freeze to solid. It will still be liquid in the freezer.
Yep.
And you can make and prepare a dozen martinis in only a minute, because you can pour it straight from the bottle into the glass, and it'll be frozen cold, pre-diluted. Dilution is important, yeah? Yeah. And you look like a rock star.
Wow, so you don't have to worry about doing the classic trick of put ice in the martini glass, let it chill while you're making it. You literally can just take the martini glass, pour it in there, and it's exactly how you made it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And you can keep the glasses in the freezer as well.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you want to show your martini making skills, maybe it's not for this occasion, but it's really good if you're hosting a bit larger amount of people. If you're just making martinis for 2, I would stir them definitely. Right. But it's quite nice if you want to host a bit more.
So Erik, do you do house calls?
Yeah.
I could go for a hand delivered martini that you just made. That would be nice.
Well, what's going on right now, Erik, is in Massachusetts, our governor is allowing restaurants to actually do takeout with cocktails.
I think it's from about 4 or 5 days ago, right? A week ago. Yeah, I saw that. I'm very happy. I'm very happy for that. And don't be afraid to go to your favorite Boston bars or wherever you are in the state, and ask if they make pre-made cocktails, and then order from them. Restaurants and bars are struggling some of the most in this time. Absolutely. And they need our support like more than ever.
100%.
100%.
Well, I saw them too. They were doing like the mixes even before they were allowing the cocktails to be made with the alcohol in it. You can even just buy the mixes. If you had a favorite Boston bar or restaurant and you liked one specific cocktail, you could just buy the mix and then add the alcohol to your liking.
So Erik, one of our guests has mentioned that in New York, they've been doing takeout cocktails for quite some time now.
Yep, they had that, Mr. Goldberg, indeed. They have, I think that they might be stopping it.
Really?
it's so many twists and turns now, so I'm having a problem keeping up, to be honest with you.
All right.
Well,
But at
things
least I'm
change.
happy that you guys are doing it.
Things constantly change. You know, if things are good, you know, they feel a little more comfortable to do this and do that, and then things get a little worse, and obviously, you know, we have to be cautious. So then things, and so it's a back and forth. I just hope that a lot of our favorite places, you know, survive, and hopefully everybody out there supports small businesses and small bars, small restaurants, and you know, hopefully we'll get through this, and everybody will still be there serving great stuff.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think like bars and bartenders are some of the most resilient craftsmen in the world. I mean, they dug out bars in Pompeii, in Europe. Bars have been around for a very long time, and bars have survived really, really bad situations. So I think that we'll come back at some point. Just have to bear with it a bit.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we gotta just be patient, get creative in our own space at home. I mean, I'm listening to a ton of friends, family, associates who are, you know, really getting into, you know, besides cooking at home, and now it's all about preparing drinks at home, which is great, because if it wasn't for this, I don't think most folks would be exploring the abilities to experiment at home.
It is true. That is very true.
Yeah, and you
It's
know,
like that.
people could get together. It's summertime. People could get together in small groups, you know, in light, small ways, and making a nice cocktail, I think, is just like so much fun. Having a few friends over in a safe way and making a nice, refreshing cocktail in the summer, as the ones you demonstrated today, is the perfect thing to do.
Excellent.
I will say I am excited to get back to traveling a bit, though, because Erik, I saw on your Instagram one of the newer Hendrick's gins. I believe it's called Amazonia, if I'm not mistaken. Just experimenting with some of the greenhouse botanicals that Leslie has, which I'm very, very curious about. But I am so curious about that gin specifically. I'm not sure if you have other cocktails you want to make, but if you could just touch on that, because I know it's only found in airports. Is that correct?
Airports.
Yeah, the Amazonia is only in airports. It's what we call travel retail exclusive.
Okay.
For a bit longer. It's going to remain that for the foreseeable future now. Okay. We are going to get it in our domestic markets after a while. But so in 2000 and I believe it was 2013, we sent Leslie Gracie and our global ambassador into the jungles of South America to search for unusual botanicals to make a limited edition gin.
That sounds like an action movie in the making.
If we had more time, I'll tell you the stories from there, because with the Indians in the jungle for over a week, and they were guided to discover that the secret botanicals, and they found an amazing botanical called scorpion tail, and they infused, they made a little distillate of that, and then infused a small batch of gin that we released to bartenders around the world. So this was around 2013-14. What we wanted to do with Hendrick's Amazonia was to sort of relive that adventure botanical moment of the unusual Hendrick's gin and create a gin that is based a little bit more on tropical notes.
Okay. Wow.
So that is what Hendrick's Amazonia is. It's a phenomenal gin. It's kind of where tropical meets gin.
Wow.
And we have been experimenting with a lot of martikis.
So it's not goodness.
Like a martini, but with a tiki touch.
Martikis.
I like that.
And no, it's a phenomenal gin, and we'll you can check our Instagrams out. I'm on Young Mr. Flanagan and a Hendrick's Gin. We're doing a lot of like recipe discovery. Well, unfortunately, we are not because we don't have it in the US market yet. We don't have recipes with it, but hendricksgin.com has a lot of those recipes. Wow. But it's a super cool gin, and once we can get traveling as we normally do again, it's going to be in the major airports. But until then, we have Midsummer Solstice out for the rest of this year. And my camera is a bit shiny here, but so Hendrick's.
So what makes that different then?
Yeah, so the Hendrick's Midsummer Solstice was released a year or so ago, and it is Hendrick's gin infused with additional floral essences. So we have the original Hendrick's gin with roses and cucumbers, the 2 different distillates. That will never change. But in this one, we have added additional floral essences. Which flowers they are, we won't quite tell you, but think of it not as one single flower, a bouquet of flowers during midsummer.
Beautiful.
And no, it is really quite lovely drink. It's a very specific gin.
So Erik, instead of getting Ari a bouquet of flowers, we can get him a bottle of Solstice.
It's it's exactly the same.
So
Exactly
I can
the
get
same.
this down the aisle at a wedding eventually, right?
It was actually created at a wedding or for a wedding.
Oh, I read
Oh,
that
right.
online.
Yeah.
Yes.
So my former colleague and global ambassador to Hendrick's, Duncan McRae, got married about 4 years ago now, I believe, and Leslie created a gin for his wedding. Our master distiller. She made only about 6 or 8 bottles, but here you go. This is your special wedding gin, and she based the gin, the botanicals in the gin, on his wife's wedding bouquet.
Oh my goodness.
Wow.
So it was really, really special for that moment. Little did they know that, there were probably some executives at that and the wedding, and they said, why don't we actually make the gin in a larger scale? So they started to, and especially, so Duncan McRae was a big part behind this, and of course Leslie Gracie, who created the formula for this. And it's out for this entire year, and next year we have a new gin coming for you.
Oh wow!
I was gonna
Can't wait.
ask
We
you.
definitely have to do another segment when that comes
Well, I was
out.
gonna say, I'm friends with the wrong people because Foti was my best man, and I got a handshake, and that's about it. And these people are getting actual gins made for their weddings.
Well, that means you have to get married again.
Yeah.
I'll
No, but
remarry anyway.
I'm
Wow.
so glad to know though that next year is when they'll stop producing it or finding it on the shelves, because I have a backup bottle right here that I have not opened for
that
this
means-
specifically, because I
that
don't know
means
when it will stop.
That means, Catherine, you got to buy a lot and stock up before it stops.
I'm gonna buy a case the next time I see it, because I do not want to run out of this.
So Erik, speaking of that, for our listening audience and our guests who have joined us, you can, if you've been intrigued and interested, you can definitely visit our website at urbanwineclub.co. We have Hendrick's available in our shopping cart for purchase, and we do deliver and ship for those that are interested in what's going on in this segment.
And I suggest totally get it because it's so good. It really is. I mean,
This is I know it behind the scenes, but I'm going on number 2.
if what this is number 2, that really means number 6, I think.
Yeah.
Well, this is a 20-ounce cup, just so you know. No, I'm kidding. But
It's close to the camera.
right?
This is a big martini.
Yeah.
Why don't we take the opportunity now and open up our segment to our guests who would love to ask any questions for you, Erik, that's derived for gin, Hendrick's, and so forth. Ari, why don't we take this moment and the opportunity to open the lines, the digital lines to questions.
Sure. I have a few questions here. One came in like when we were talking about the James Bond segment, and somebody asked, I think it's Vicky. She asked, why does James Bond like it shaken? I don't know if there's a real answer to that since he's a fictional character, but if you know anything.
Why would you say he's fictional?
Exactly.
What do you wish you were James Bond?
Could be real.
I'm home.
No, it is more maybe rather how Ian Fleming wanted it.
That's
as he was writing the book in Mayfair. I think that he was out for something that was unique, something out of the ordinary, and something that was a little bit pioneering and daring.
Yeah, that's a good writing point. That's a good writing style, a good writing way to do it. So it makes sense. Good answer. Good answer.
Yeah. If you're in London, there's the Duke's Hotel, where he allegedly came up with a drink together with a bar team there. the bartender. It's a hotel just off Mayfair in London.
Well,
I can
one of our
recommend that.
guests, Erik, just made a comment that he didn't want it poisoned.
Want it poison. I'm not sure if that was the actual case, but it
That
probably
sounds
makes for an
good.
amazing story.
Moving
Well, there were some champagne producers, allegedly. I'm not sure this is actually true, but they would make a clear bottle so they could see if somebody poured something in it.
Interesting.
But yeah, but the beauty of our industry is just that it's just that we there are so many stories around it.
Yeah. Okay, so I have a few more questions, and let's see. Gin, does gin go off? Does it have a shelf life? Is there a certain amount of time you have to drink it, or?
It doesn't really go off. You can keep it for years, absolutely. Hendrick's gin is stored in black glass or glass bottles to protect it from sunlight. Traditionally, so like medicines and then herbal essences would be kept in black glass to protect them from sunlight. Gin, however, it's distilled really well these days, so it's pretty okay. So if you open it, it's fine. You can keep it for quite a while.
Interesting. And I just want to make a point that if you have a bottle of Hendrick's gin for years, it's just sad. So drink your Hendrick's gin.
Good point.
Yeah, unless it's your reserve stash, then.
Let's see. All right, this is an odd question. I don't know if there's any science to it, but can gin help you lose weight?
We wouldn't say that there are any health benefits with drinking alcohol at all. So I wouldn't go in there.
I think I don't know. From what I've read, I don't know if it's true or not, because I just don't know. But it said something about there's something in gin that would help speed up a metabolism. But again, these are things that
There's only one way to find out.
Yeah. I'm gonna go on an gin diet.
Yeah, no, we really don't recommend going on an all gin diet.
Flowers.
No, but because gin has botanicals in it. Some of the botanicals have been traditionally used as medicinal herbs. That being said, gin is not a medicine, and gin is not something that would be even considered a medicine. But the links can be made like that, but we would never say, we definitely say that gin is not a medicinal.
I got a question that just came in. Why do gins typically have a higher alcohol content than other spirits?
Higher alcohol content?
Yeah, I guess I'm assuming typically gins seem to be at a higher level of alcohol content than other spirits. Is there a reason why, or is it just?
Well, yeah, there are a few reasons. It's a great question, and it goes into what the liquid is about. Compared to white spirits, gin is at a higher alcohol content, absolutely. When we look at whiskey, and particularly American whiskey and bourbon, they sometimes go up higher. They go high as well, and even higher than gin. But when we look at just white spirits for now, the reason that gin is a bit higher than, let's say, vodka or tequila, and the white rum is around 80 proof, is that what we want to do is that we want to carry the flavor of the botanicals through. So that's the most important thing. And the botanicals are really coming to life at around after 84, 86 proof, and like really blossoming in that like quite narrow spectrum up to, a little bit higher than that. And that's all up to the master distiller to see like where the gin is at its peak when it comes to releasing its flavor. But gin peaks a little bit higher, if you wish, than vodka or tequila. And tequila has, I mean, legally should not be made over 80 proof anyway, and
Really?
in
Okay.
Mexico it's even lower. But it's not my specialty to talk about agave spirits, but mezcal goes a bit higher. But for tequila, it is a very robust spirit anyway, so the flavor is very concentrated and you can taste agave in there. But when it comes to gin, we really don't taste anything of the raw material the alcohol is made from. So the only thing we taste in gin are the botanicals. Which means that it's the only spirit, by the way, that doesn't have any flavor of the raw material the alcohol is made from. You know, like whiskey has, you know, whatever you make whiskey from, corn, rye, barley, it has character from that grain. Tequila has character from agave, the rum has character of sugarcane, etc. But gin has the flavor from the botanicals which we fill with neutral alcohol. But the alcohol in itself is neutral.
I see. Okay.
Right.
Ari,
So,
any other questions?
Yeah, I don't know if this is if there's a one answer to this or if there's like waves, but when did gin become popular? Now, is that, I don't know if that means like in modern times, because I know gin has a history, but
I would think modern times.
yeah, I think gin has peaked at least twice. And the second time, the last time now is the last decade, maybe 15 years. So Hendrick's was quite early in the 99 to come out, but we weren't like, it wasn't a global gin in 1990. It launched in a couple of bars here in the northeast of America. It wasn't anywhere else in the world. It took over 3 years for Hendrick's gin to be launched in its home country. So it was tiny back then. But if you learn, like where gin started to really come into life, I would say from 2005 onward, it's really started to gain momentum. 2010, we saw it was a global movement, and 15 and now 20, there are 7,000 or 8,000 gins in the world.
Wow. What, if you know this, what country or countries drink the most gin?
Yeah, it's a funny answer to that one, actually.
Aside from Forty's house, specifically.
Apart from that, I haven't looked at the last couple of years data for globally, but before that, it used to be not very many people expected, but it's the Philippines.
Wow.
Really?
Oh.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
I thought you would have said like Scotland or something.
Yeah, but Scotland has a population of about 5 million or something. It's significantly less than 10. And Philippines are now a bit over 100, I think. So per capita. They do drink a lot of gin in the Philippines.
Now,
and they only have rum and gin, basically.
Is that like because of like marketing or tactics, or is that because just the Filipino people kind of gravitate towards it?
They have a distillery that makes a lot of local spirits. So both rum, predominantly rum, to be honest, and gin. And that distillery, because it's local, and the price for a bottle of that gin it's very low. So the volumes can be allowed to be very, very big there. But I would say, I would assume the United States is number 2. And England and, UK in general, but they are 6 times smaller like a population almost. So, or 5 at least.
I got a question for someone that came in. I keep my bottle of Hendrick's in the freezer. Is that good or bad?
It's nothing wrong with that at all.
Okay.
It's really good to, like, gin. The gin should be cold, but the piano should be hot. Oh, that's one of my favorite quotes from the musical Chicago.
I like it.
But it's great to make martinis with a really, really cold gin to start off with. It doesn't need, but yeah, I mean, if there's nothing wrong with it, and if you like it that cold, absolutely.
All right, so
I would keep it between the freezer and the fridge.
We need to buy a freezer just for our spirits.
Sure.
All right, great.
Absolutely.
What else you got, Ari?
All right, let me scroll through here. Let me see. Is there anything else?
Catherine?
I just have more of a comment, I guess, than a question. I mean, so I came from a craft distillery before this, and you know, it's hard to get a craft distillery, you know, really up and running nationwide. And but the way you talk about Hendrick's and how small the team is, the way that they make it, it's still so similar to just craft distilleries in general. But you guys are, you know, internationally renowned, and you're such a big brand. So I love hearing the way that you talk about the way that the team of distillers actually, you know, they really take a lot of care into the way that they distill it. I love hearing that craft side of it, because you guys have done so well, just marketing wise, placement wise. So I just love to hear your side of that story. So
Well
thank
said,
you.
Well said, Catherine.
Yeah.
Thank you, Catherine. No, it's a beautiful. We used to make Hendricks in a very, very tiny part of the distillery in Girvan, in that southwest corner of Scotland. And we built a gin palace now. It was mainly for Leslie, so she could have a fancier workplace, because we love her dearly.
Yeah.
But also to kind of hero a little bit what we do. But it was inconspicuous like up to 3 years ago. So it was still made in that very small mindset.
Yeah.
So Erik, I have a question. Whenever the travel bans are done, we go back to quote unquote being normal again, does the distillery offer tours and visits and so forth? Is that possible?
We're not open to visitors yet.
Yes.
We weren't open before the distillery event, unfortunately. We are still kind of figuring out how we have a visitor tour there. So we have at the William Grant & Sons, we are a family-owned Scottish company, and we are distilling spirits at 2 sites. So the family home is up in Dufftown, in the heart of Speyside, where we make Glenfiddich, the Balvenie, and other single malts.
Wow.
And Hendrick's is made in the southwest corner, just south of Glasgow, where we make Hendrick's gin, Grant's whiskey, and a bunch of other innovative spirits. So the site up in Dufftown, in Speyside, is one of the most beautiful visitor centers in the whole of Whiskey Scotland. But the one that we make Hendrick's in, it's still not really, we're not quite there yet, and we want to do it perfectly.
Excellent, excellent.
What's your preferred way, or not preferred way, what's your preferred temperature? Room temperature, cold?
For gin in general? On its own?
Yeah, I guess this is directed towards you. And what's your favorite temperature to enjoy gin? So like Foti said before, I'm assuming, now I'm speaking on behalf of the question asker, but Foti said before, somebody said they keep theirs in the freezer. When you're gonna kick back and relax and make a gin cocktail, what is that preferred method?
I think depending on which cocktail to make, of course, but I want to aim, if I make a cocktail, to as a low temperature as I can. And that's why it's never wrong to have the freezer, as long as you know how long to stir martinis and get the proper dilution. I think the end temperature in a drink is a result of what you have done, but aim at as low as possible is always good. When I'm sipping gin for gin tastings, etc., it's room temperature or just below.
Yeah. Interesting.
All right. This is I don't know. This is an odd question. Is all gin clear?
It's clear. All gins are clear. Very few gins are aged for short time, or it's not really aged per se. They're rested rather. Because gin is distilled from a neutral grain spirit. The neutral grain spirit doesn't age particularly well because you're aging ethanol. Whilst if you're aging whiskey, you're aging a little bit bigger array of types of alcohols and other congeners, which builds the flavor in the whiskey. And that's why whiskey kind of matures and becomes better with age. But gin, the base spirit you're aging is just ethanol. So technically you're only aging botanicals, and that's why most people don't really age gin. But there are some who do, and some that are pretty decent as well.
Cool.
Wow, interesting. All right, I think that is it. I have some more, but they're just repeats. So yeah,
Well,
I think that's it.
all right, there's just one more question before we sign off.
Juniper berries?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah, I got the chat up here actually. Yeah, so sourcing botanicals is a really, really important thing for a gin buyer, and we get sent hundreds in total of juniper samples every year to see like these juniper berries and whatnot. That being said, we won't choose juniper berries based on geographic location. Leslie believes in choosing juniper berries 100% only on the quality and the oil content. So they typically tend to come from the same places in Central Europe, but it can vary. So we won't like specify exactly where they come from because it does vary slightly. But her philosophy is just she wants the best juniper, and hard botanicals do differ. They change year to year. Tuscany had a terrible earthquake some time ago, and the juniper just wasn't the same after that. And then, you know, if you paint yourself back into a corner, you say you only use Tuscan juniper because they were the best before that. What you gonna do then? So the reason why we do that is that she just wants the best, and she's the boss. So if they might come from a different country sometimes, so be it. It's not really our focus. The beauty of gin, I think, just to cover a little short on this, is that we have botanicals from 4 continents. Yeah.
Wow.
So it's truly a global spirit when it comes to what flavors are in there. And most other spirit categories, at least, are geospecific. In cognac, small part of France. Tequila, only some regions in Mexico. Bourbon, only in America, etc., etc. Gin has flavor from all over the world, and that's one of the beautiful things about it.
Awesome.
Beautiful
Wow.
indeed.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome.
This is all great. I mean, I've been drinking gin off and on for many years, and I think in the last 45, 50 minutes, I've learned more than I have in the 25 years of drinking gin.
We should do this more often, Footy. This is amazing for this.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we should not have to wait for next year for the new variant, I think.
No, but well, having said that, Erik, we're definitely going to have you back on as a repeat guest, as joining us for other segments. But before we actually do sign off, can you just let us know again any type of social media handles? I know you mentioned them. Web addresses, things that you can let our listening audience know to get more information about Hendrick's Gin, besides the fact that they can purchase it on urbanwineclub.co. But I wanted to give you the opportunity to let our audience know other.
And we'll also post all your web links and social media handles everywhere we post this webinar.
Yeah, so of course, hendricksgin.com has a ton of recipes and much more information on the specific gins that we make. And if you want to follow me at Young Mr. Flanagan,
where did that name come from?
So my mentor back in the days when I started bartending, Mr. Hans Biel back in Sweden, he was referencing the movie Cocktail, and Tom Cruise's character is Brian Flanagan. So I became Young Mr. Flanagan.
I love it.
Stuck with me for a little bit. Yeah. It's my Instagram or my Ginstagram, if you wish.
Wow.
You can do that. And of course, we have the Hendrick's Gin on Instagram as well, which is good. And we are also coming out with our US Instagram next year. So have a look for that when that comes out. But also, thank you everyone for joining the Zoom. It's been amazing. Thank you so much, you guys, for hosting it. All the 3 of you, and Urban Wine Club for holding it. And big shout out. I heard there were some people turning in from Greece on
Yes.
this.
We want to say one of our dear friends, Urania, who's in Athens at the moment. So it's got to be like 3 a.m. at the moment.
Yeah, she's
Dedication.
still on and she's still going.
But,
Good
Love
for her.
it.
But
And
There's
I
this amazing bar down there called the Clumsies in Athens. I hope they're still up and going and
The
still going well.
Clumsies?
Yeah.
That was named after Foti, you know that, right?
I knew that was coming when you said that.
how appropriate.
I knew
How
it.
appropriate.
Well,
How
I was saying to Erik earlier before we signed on, not to blow his head up, but like he's built a little bit of a following on our social media, so we have to have him back again. Actually, we did. Where is this? We use this picture here, and we're getting all sorts of people that are just constantly like, oh, who is this and where's he from and what's he doing? So Erik, you got to come back. You got to join us. You have to make it a regular thing.
We'll make it happen real soon again.
He's truly the most interesting man in the gin world.
Absolutely. And it gives us an excuse to drink great gin. So fine by me.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much, Erik. We greatly appreciate it. This was more than just a treat for us here at the Urban Wine Club.
Yes, thank you so much.
To our listening audience, thank you so much for joining us. Please continue to stay tuned for all of our upcoming events, urbanwineclub.co, all of our handles and so forth.
And we're going to post all of Erik's social handles, but honestly, check them out. He posts some really cool stuff, interesting video clips, recipes. It's just, I enjoy looking at it. Like I'm not stalking you, Erik, but like it's a great thing to follow him.
Yes,
Awesome.
thank you very much, everybody. And thank you to my host as well.
Thanks everybody for tuning in. Thank you, Catherine. Thank you, Foti. Thank you very much, Erik. Thanks for all our viewers. And we'll see you next time.
Cheers, everyone.
Hendrick.
See you next time. Cheers.
Bye-bye.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye.